Ballista. It's something that we've seen a lot of teams do. Actually, in the ERLs, has been a very popular thing, but we've seen it, of course, across some of our major regions too. And with Lee Sin potentially heading down that early dress code, Hatel and Unica, that is where I am looking for V3. Get something going in that 2v2, particularly at that level 1. Someone like an Aphelios cannot fight against these champions. If that doesn't get enough, though, I'm looking at this mid jungle from the Hawks, where they have typically found their successes. They have champions that can go in. They have champions that can carry. And that is warning signs already coming out of the draft from V3. And that's not even the end of it, because there are a lot of comfort champions on the side of Hawks, which they have always managed to succeed on. Lots to be afraid of here from V3.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I like the fact that they're decisive, but you said Hawks themselves, they'll be happy with the draft. And so far this split, the successes of Hawks came when Blank and Dasher are on the same page. Well, I would sure hope they are, with a Wukong and a Silas. Throwing Rhino into the mix, and this looks like a comp that once you are getting into those mid-late game fights, and Dresco doesn't have like a 2,000 gold lead over Marble,
Gets tough,
I'm not giving V3 too much of a chance. Like, that's the 49 out of 50.
Yeah, because I'm looking at the roles that everyone has to play within this team, because within both teams, I suppose. You know, we've already talked about what can happen with the Hawks, but basically there comes a point in the game where you're sat there as dress code, and even though you have Washidai on someone who's big and beefy in front of you, that Rel is probably going to get onto you. That Wukong is probably going to get onto you, especially if they're helped by that Silas. Speaking of the Silas, they've got their own inroads. Nah, similar. Literally every champion, including the Aphelios Moonlight Vigil, is going to have ways to reach you. Kalista hates those kinds of scenarios. It really is, again, doubling down on that Kalista lead and what V3 can do with it. Again, just resetting the stakes and the context, V3 actually have had some solid early games before. That's the one area of the game, even though they have been winless this year, which we have really praised them for. So that's one thing to keep an eye on. Now, I'm going to quickly go on to another point, too. I know, I like talking sometimes, because I've not had much chance to talk. It's because I haven't had much chance to talk in this first round robin. Of course, my first game back on the LJL OU. Little baby project of mine that it is, alongside the other founders. I'd love to chat about Unica and Yu-Gi-Oh! Actually, because last year they made their way into the LJL, and they found themselves debuting onto some different rosters. Both of these players have found their way up to the LJL before, and when they were in the LJL, what I would say is that they were on comfort or on easy champions to pilot within their roles in the game. When Unica was coming into V3 to replace Muujin last year in terms of subbing in, he was playing stuff like Diana. You know what Diana does? Full clears. Doesn't have to do much until those team fights. Level 1 happening this bot side, not actually going to lead to too much. Seems like the Hawks are managing to survive so far. And Yu-Gi-Oh! In his own right was playing stuff like some of his real comfort champions, which meant that these players were allowed to kind of have their easy way into the LJL. They were eased into it. Now they have such a big responsibility for their team, and in a game like this, it is very difficult, as we were saying, to play out these kind of team comps against the Hawks.
Yeah, and we'll see how it does go on. You do just want to touch on one of the rune choices, of course, First Strike. We'll see if Yu-Gi-Oh! Is going to be able to get some effectiveness out of it, playing into a melee matchup, something worth pointing out anyways.
It's been the typical rune for Corki. It just means that when you hit your 2 items, you hit a rocket on someone, the extra % damage and extra gold coming across really, really hurts. Particularly with First Strike, it's not as early game focused as something like Kleptomancy used to be, which is what the rune is often related to. It actually ends up speeding you from your first and second item onwards, really, because that's when you do significant damage to actually get value out of that rune and start trading very heavily. Remember when Talon would take that rune in the jungle? He'd just end up like trading 80% of your HP and getting like 400, 500 gold out of it. That's kind of what Corki wants to do with the big one rockets too. It's obviously gives you access to the inspiration tree, but it also just helps you get on the board and accelerate when you're already into the game.
Alright, Unica pathing towards the bot side right now. You can see Yu-Gi-Oh! Already leaving the mid lane. Unfortunately for V3, Dresco and Hatel are pushing it quite deep, so I don't think there is any angle to dive or otherwise kill
actually,
Marble.
Reiner and Marble have done a very good job here, because as we said, you can't really fight Kalista or Mumu level 1, even though Rel has a fairly strong level 1 as far as things go, particularly when you are against champions that can't cancel your crash down. Aphelios isn't a champion until you get level 2 and you get access to your double switch abilities, where you kind of, level 1 you're switching between weapons, but neither of them have an ability. You get 2 of them at level 2, isn't that fun? on. But so they've managed to survive that, hold the wave outside of their tower, survive that very telegraphed early gank because Unica has to be bot side. This is where their win condition is. And the Hawks, in a very intelligent way, have denied V3 one of their first entrances into this game.
Okay, for a second I mind blanked and I thought that Blank was the top laner for some reason. Never mind, screw that. That was a moment where I was like, what is going on? But I completely agree with you. There is nothing that V3 were really able to do, and now as the first rotation of junglers is concluded and the first recalls happen, it is Blank on the bot side. So for the next minute or so, V3 still are without that angle, and as we both identified, it's the only thing they can do.
It's the real place where you're looking for, because, like, I'm looking at the top side, I'm like, yeah, you don't have a flash in Citroni, the Ignite helps, but, you know, closing down Kanatsu is not going to be very easy. See that Dasher already trading hard in that mid lane, and again, it is such a delight to see Dasher back on these playmaking, diving assassins. Loved watching his Akali and his LeBlanc in years past, and Dasher... Actually, you know what? Let's go on a bit of a longer point about this, because it looks like junglers are not close to their lanes right now. We've got a bit of time to work things out as resets come through. Dasher, this year, was meant to be our best mid laner. I'm just going to say that straight out, because Arya left, and we had this void at the top thinking Dasher was our second best mid laner. And then poor Dasher has to deal with Yaharong and Jet coming in. Of course, Dasher sees this mid 2v2 coming up, and he's not really had a chance to flex his muscles at the top of the table. He's had to kind of sit there and be, again, in this second rung of mid laners in the LJL. As much as he is a very talented player, seems like what it means to be an LJL mid laner this year in particular has taken an extra step upwards with the addition of other players. But Dasher, even with that, continuing to be consistent, if not the star player, which he was and potentially is past.
Yeah, now given yet another opportunity to really show that. I mean, I will reiterate again a point that I touched on earlier. Hawks have looked great when it was Dasher together with Blank on the same page, but, you know, that requires both of them, and in particular, Dasher to be stepping it up. And, I mean, just a little play that happened there, getting Rhino to come into the mid lane, gain the priority, and Hawks are, despite having a bot lane that's playing all the way under their tower, they have control over the river.
They do, and this is what it means to be a higher level team in a competitive sense. Now, V3, they have solid players. We saw what they did to the academy scene, and we've seen what they can do in various early games, but the Hawks are just better at rotating. Well, not just rotating, but resetting. They've ended up getting back into this bot lane. They have a wave stacked up, so they can crash that into the enemy turret and not held in this weird purgatory between the two towers when Dresscode and Hetzel can freeze it maybe themselves and run them down in the elongated lane. While they're doing this, Blank was on the bot side. They know that they're safe, and the Hawks bot lane have, just in a very intelligent way, they've managed to reset, hold the lane where they wanted to, and V3 just aren't on the same level as them in regards to what they can do with their minions.
Well, that translates into you start seeing those CS advantages creep up across the map, most notably in bot lane, the last place where we would expect Hawks to have an advantage, as Hetzel goes for the bandage toss and is severely punished for it.
Yeah, what happened there was Hetzel goes for the bandage toss. Thing is, Reiner ends up channeling that crash down and drags him backwards, CCing with the Glacial at the same time. Actually, Reiner playing that really well. Drags them back into Aphelios' active range. Kalista not in range to really follow up on that one either. So a quick trade ends up being a little bit dangerous there for Hetzel. Loses a lot of HP and has to burn through their pots, so at least they're going to be ready for another all-in should it happen. But again, Reiner showing mastery of what has come to be one of his most favored champions, especially since its release.
Alright, Unica gonna be looking for the top lane. Let's see how that one turns out. Kanatsu immediately burns the flash. We still have the Glacial Prison. That is going to connect. The Ignite comes down. We still have the Dragon's Rage. First blood picked up by Unica.
Kanatsu a little too far forward, doesn't have vision in topside, and doesn't get the double hop. Both ultimates used from Unica and Washedeye. Unica not even needing to use that flash, though. But V3, it's a little late into the game, should I say. And I know it's only 8 minutes in, but they need to get these early advantages. It's a little late in, but they get something on the board. Sadly, it's not on the area of the map we were asking for them for it. As much as Dresscode at this point, going to be able to get some advantages back because they know that the top lane is kind of the area of focus for the Hawks right now as they take that Herald. But again, V3 at least on the board.
It's at least something, but it's what we've seen from them so many times before. Unica tends to find those early ganks, and this is nothing really new to us. I mean, Kanatsu overextending here, maybe not respecting the lack of vision and getting caught out.
Just doesn't get the double hop. Doesn't get the double hop. Means that he has to flash away a lot earlier than maybe he had wanted to. If you hold on to that flash a little longer, maybe you can dodge out on the Glacial Prison. That doesn't end up landing, but the way it ends up is a kill going over to Unico. Sadly, not more gold into Washidai's pocket. You can see that at least plates haven't fallen on that top side. Kanatsu getting his own individual advantages. Just a quick slip up there to reduce some of that effect.
First Dragon now being picked up. Good to see. Actually, the bot lane being used for something. Now, Hetel ticked over to level 6 quite recently. Curse of the Submami is up and available. If there was ever a time where you can just brute force and engage, it's gotta be now.
Well, you say that. I'm looking at 2 other players moving their way down bot side because Varble sat under his turret, but jungle and support, they are there. Jungle support, of course, so important in the competitive level, and Blank has been there to cover so the Hawks bot lane. So, if Tel does want to go in, it's probably going to have to be at the cost of the Kalista ultimate to keep them safe. And again, Blank has that Herald, knows that probably the play would come down in that bot side. Nowhere else on the map is seeming like a big option for them right now. And V3 are losing out right now because nothing's happening. This is a win for the Hawks because nothing really has registered for V3.
They just got that one kill. And that's it. Iron Spike Whip, I guess, for Unica, but that is not the returns that you are looking
wow,
for.
What an item completion. Ooh,
Yeah,
that's gonna win the next fight.
Man.
I mean,
the AoE damage.
I mean, very different team, but Megaman on Axes was a big Iron Spike Whip user. He used that to on his mid lane champions. Speaking of that mid lane, Dasho just again giving some love taps in that. Pushing Yu-Gi-Oh! Under turret. It's going to be gold to that Silas, and that is a scary fact. You are fighting a Meganar here, folks!
Yeah, I don't know what they are thinking is going to happen, but Kanatsu is just going to hop away to safety, going down into the mini burst of movement speed to literally just walk away. And in the meantime, 2 plays picked up in the mid lane by the Hawks.
But he was just about to go mini. Why not wait until that point? Kanatsu manages to use that Gnar to buy enough space, of course, with Blank and Dasher getting control over mid lane. It's not like Yu-Gi-Oh! Could really respond. The Hawks, again, just in a more safe position. And at that point, that one feels like a bit of an overforce. And again, it's not in the area of the map that V3 really want to be playing around. It feels a little bit... Okay, I'm not going to quite call it desperation, but it's already starting to run out of a couple of their more bright ideas.
Finally, Unica's pathing towards the bot side. But I agree, we have seen them stand around this top for so long. And... Hell, you're on a ward, man. Oh no, Unica is also going to be spotted out. So I don't expect Marble and Rhino to be walking up anytime soon.
Ah, yes. The time-honored tradition of wasting the jungler's time. That's a fun one. Dasher taking such hard trades. And remember, actually, even stealing Corkio like this, so much damage.
Ooh, Yu-Gi-Oh! Getting very close to the Hex Drinker, making sure he has some HP really to stay alive on bot. Yeah, Silas, once you manage to prog that Conqueror, I don't think you're winning any 1v1s there, Yu-Gi-Oh!
Oh, Hetel. Might need to use that Kalista ult getting called up.
It is going to be used indeed, and just the ultimate, but it is a free cooldown that Hawks forced by, what, being...
There's a flash on Dasher. This could very much be a kill. No Hex Drinker.
Yu-Gi-Oh! Okay, he's going to flash away. Not very necessary, but doesn't get tagged by the Abduct anyways. He's going to be saved. The thing is, and it's very obvious once we're watching this game, it's always Hawks that are pushing V3.
And that is, again, you look at these compositions, and it was just right out the potential storm that might be coming in the first 5 to 10 minutes. They've gone beyond that now. Hawks have managed to find their own way into this game, and Kanatsu even feeling bold enough to walk in and go to the topside jungle, and the ult doesn't quite land from Washidai.
The insect is going to be used, but Kanatsu's got a flash of his own. Will he use it? Gets stunned by the the Grift's going to miss! Oh, thank God the flare from Washidai.
Oh, it
saves the absolute disaster. But the Magnet Storm in the bot lane. Reiner finds the engage. Dresco is getting ran down by Marble. One more auto blank gonna hop in for the kill, and Hetel is going to compensate his life choices.
Oh, with each and every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction, and Hawks use this law of physics in the law of cross-mapping from top to bot. They find themselves 2 kills on bot lane. And you know that win condition, you know that Wrecking Ball of Kalista, it has been snapped from the chain, it's not even gotten swinging. And while there are a couple of kills towards the top 2v2 in terms of V3, it's not really getting you a win condition. It's feel good. It's a moment in the sun, but it is going to be quickly snuffed out when you're getting towards these fights and you have to match up 5v5 against what Hawks can do with their composition. And Kanatsu, he's having a bit of some happy... Okay, you know what? After further review, This was a normal Summoner's Rift experience, and it was not negative gaming from Kanatsu. He has himself such a close escape. He's waiting for his flash to come available, and I'm going to be honest here. If Dasha genuinely believed, I reckon that Kanatsu gets out alive.
Yeah, this was definitely way too close for comfort, and then the response in the bot lane. When you put Rel together with a Wukong, things happen. Alright, off screen, we have the Hexing Dragon and Picto. Yeah, and Dresco doesn't have any summoners. He is just dead. Hitel gonna walk? Gonna try to walk anyways. 2 more kills for Hawks, and they're happening in the bot lane. You know what, as a V3 fan, and registered copium vendor. It just feels so bad. It's feeling so bad because whenever they've got a lane to play around, Unica just goes to the other side of the map. I'm like, you can play around Washidai, he goes bot lane. You can play around bot lane, he goes to Washidai.
That is, you have to start asking questions, right? I mean, not that the questions haven't been asked already, and if you've seen spring, seen most of this summer as well, in terms of the first round robin, those questions will continue to be asked. Dasha has a Reiner over the wall and is continuing to trade heavily. That Hex Drinker is back up and available from Yu-Gi-Oh, but you can see how much Dasha is willing to flex those muscles. And again, it is just really nice to see Dasha on an agency, high damage, high presence pick in that mid lane, because Dasha has forever actually been one of my favorite players in the LJL. Even when he was struggling on the Hawks back in 2020 as a top laner in spring, this guy has continually tried to play to the best of his ability what his team needs him to be, and in this game, it has been a bit more of that playmaker, which is a welcome return for the player.
Absolutely, and we saw the gold take over there. Marble is huge. I'm just going to put it out there. 1-0 and 3, 30 CS ahead, has got the full tower to him. I don't remember if that was pre or post plates, but either way, dress code is not going to be able to match the damage, and in a role like AD carry, if you can't match your opponent's damage, well, you're in deep trouble.
Especially when you're a champion like Kalista, who basically stays alive by drain tanking through a lot of things and being able to shrug off the initial amount of damage. And also the other thing about Kalista is that Kalista becomes infinitely more dangerous when you have to dive onto her. At 0-2, you're probably okay to just take the frontline fight, because Kalista's not going to punish you for that. It's in a similar way to if you've played against Dravens or anything else like that, which becomes a real problem when they're ahead of the game, because they threaten to just kill you when you dive onto a different target. That's not going to be the case in this game. You look at dress code, and sadly, yet again, this player who came in to, of course, replace Marble, who is outgoing from V3, lest we forget, rather, what the heck happened with the off-season between V3 and Marble. Dress code hasn't really managed to fill the shoes that V3 wanted in that bot lane carry, and once again, they are struggling to put together what they need to do in this game. It's a little directionless now. They have themselves 2 dragons. That's definitely something going for them. They find something onto Blank, but I'm not sure this is the fight you want.
L is gonna drop the ultimate, they're going to commit anyways, but the Magnet Storm coming in from Reiner, playing the distraction, but Dresco picks up the kill. The problem is, V3 are trading all of their health bars, and as you mentioned, Dasher is on the teleport behind the rest of the team. Now, could be in a potential 1v5, so he is just going to nope out of this one. V3, they're gonna get a kill.
They get a kill, but they are losing a lot in bot side. They're losing side waves while this is happening. If they get mid out of turret, this is a significant win. If it stays at just the 1 kill, not as great for them. Charger's coming in, and that's the ult in return from Dasher.
Yeah, Dresco's getting slowed down. The turret's so incredibly low. It is going to stay alive. Hawks managed to defend, and V3 will be leaving very, very unhappy.
And because now you've used that Herald, that's the second Herald, you're not going to get another one of them. You have to ask yourself, when do you get to return towards mid lane? You've parked that Aphelios there. Aphelios is, of course, not really under as much threat, given that this Kalista isn't as threatening in themselves. I think the Hawks, by not losing that tower there, have come away with, again, quite a niche big victory. Reiner does give up their life for this. You maybe have to wonder whether that teleport could have come in a little earlier from Dasher. Of course, Dasher has a crown, and most of the time that's not great in a lot of these fights into something that outranges you like a Corki. But if you come into that fight with a crown, you get to just smash through the first couple of seconds while you got that damage buff debuff on. That could have been such a huge flank, and the Hawks barely miss out on managing to get the best case scenario from that fight. Again, this is probably why Hawks aren't one of our top teams. They are there, kind of playing that gatekeeper between the top 2 to 3 and the rest of the table, but again, they're not as clean as they could be. That's the next step we need to see from them and see if they have another opportunity later into this game, shows a bit more of that clean engage.
The Baron is going to be up in a minute, another Dragon in 15 seconds, so we'll have plenty of opportunities to see their objective setups, to see their macro game, and how they just go about expanding the lead that they already got against the V3.
So, minute until that Baron comes up. Dragon is up now. Importantly, Hawks have themselves control of that bot lane. Mid lane is more contested, sure, and V3 have access to the river. They've got that big choke point. They have first crack at that area of the map. But if Dasher gets to push in bot lane, they can get flanked, and they don't have the best flanking vision right now. Dasher is clearing it out, and if it does come to V3 wanting to get up to Soul Point, which would be a big turning point for them, you have to consider the fact that they might be in very big danger from, as we said, that flank which Hawks couldn't quite pull off the last time.
Hey, we've got the package, Yu-Gi-Oh's got the teleport, and the Dragon is being set up. Hawks right now in the position, but they will...
Teleporting in.
Dasher is on a flank angle, going to be spotted out by that controller. The Dragon is down to 4,000 health, going down to 2,000. It's going to be going down. It's secured by Blank. Dash is still on the flank, not looking to go in. Kanatsu is mega. He's got access to the flash, but the V3 orderly disengaged for the time being, just walking it out. They gave up the Dragon. Sometime in the middle, the tower fell, but yeah, it's a Drake for a tower.
Yeah. In the tug of war, V3 get themselves that out of turret. Remember, there is still a package here from Yu-Gi-Oh! Just remaining, but he's only got one rocket to follow up with follow-up DPS. Dasher has the Amumu wall, has flash, maybe looking.
Rhino's on that flank as well. This is potentially a big Magnet Storm.
There we go.
Two members, and the combo being laid down by Dasher. V3, they just don't have enough damage to lay down onto the Hawks. Fate's Call gonna be used to save Hetel. 1 kill. Picked up by Hawks, 2 kills as Kanatsu finds the boomerang.
So with 2 kills and the jungler dead, Hawks maybe have an angle to go towards Baron. Actually, with the low death timers and not the best weapons on the Aphelios, I don't think they feel like they have the DPS to start that up. But honestly, again, I feel like V3, most of that fight was going okay for them. They could stomach it, because if you lose the Dragon but you get that mid out of turret, that's kind of okay. But then they give up that first kill and the big end of that fight after that point. And this is where things, again, feels like V3 overstayed. You actually have a decent win at this point. V3 potentially looking to split that fight up, collapse on one side of things, but doesn't really end up that way. The only reason this doesn't go as bad as it does is because, again, you got that Kalista ultimate, and Hetel kind of plays rearguard action, gets to be Fates called out of the fray. And Kanatsu at least manages to get that right at the very end. But again, it feels like V3, we're kind of used to them losing so much that it feels like, you know, oh, do we have to dunk on this for XYZ fights? That could have still gone a lot worse. It's just, what are you going to do with this stalled time at this point? It's not that the game's over right now. You are at some point going to have a Corki that's relevant. But when does that become something you start playing around?
Only 1 item on Yu-Gi-Oh! So going to be at least a couple of minutes, and Unica is going to be falling off. I mean, at some point it is just an insect bot. But the bigger problem is dress code. Is he ever going to be relevant in those team fights in this game?
You know, this reminds me. Well, okay. It can be in the right situation, because if you end up playing around these tricky flank angles, as, again, we like to call them here on the broadcast, or at least I do, the flangle. If you have someone like Dasher, who is trying to play on the flank, try and play things a bit tricksy, and then gets hit by that Kalista, we can see something very similar to one of our games between Rascal Jester and DFM from Spring, where Rascal Jester was so far behind, and then DFM managed... Oh, no, sorry, actually, it wasn't even last split. It would have been last year. Heck, they've played so many times in this magnificent rivalry that I end up losing. I'm getting old, I tell you. But you can definitely see players who are very proficient, and teams that are very proficient at pulling off picks with the Kalista, being able to punish some of these flanks. So we'll have to see if Dasher goes for that again. We've talked a lot about Hawks going for those flanks. They're going for a big top lane play, big power play for them. What can they do with it?
The kick is going to get Blank away, though I believe that was just the clone, and the Magnet Storm is keeping Yu-Gi-Oh! In place. Comes coming in with the Glacial Prison, but the cavalry has arrived, and Marble will lay down the damage. Dasher takes 1 kill as well. 3-4-0. Hawks take the tower. They're going to turn towards the Baron.
And V3, they pile onto that fight topside, knowing they aren't going to have their AD carry there. We talked about that Kalista. You were talking about, when is Dresco going to be a factor? We were just talking about how it can do when you are in charge of the picks, when you manage to find someone away from the fight. They commit to that big fight. They don't even have that Kalista there, and this is going to be the mistake which breaks this game. V3, not like it was unlikely for them to lose this game, given their record on paper and what they've been showing us recently. But this is a bit of a sad situation for them yet again. It felt like they'd stalled out, felt like they could have held on a little longer. But one bad commitment to a fight in this one, it feels like that story starts going away from them. Again, just look at this. Your Kalista's in mid lane. You know you aren't getting to this fight, and yet they commit. You could have pulled out of this. Could have maybe just given up Yujo around this topside turret and go, well, it's whatever. It is what it is. We managed to keep everyone alive. Because the Corki goes down alongside the jungler, alongside that everyone else really, and that Amumu going in, you give up the Baron, you probably give up the game with it.
It's tough to imagine how V3 claw their way back into this one, especially now that those inner towers, they're all still standing. So if, or rather when, Hawks will be able to knock them down, that is even more gold being funneled into the rest of the team, and we're already staring at, what, 6,000, 7,000?
A lot of money in the bank.
Yeah,
a lot of money in the bank. It's just about a 7,500 gold lead once that inner turret goes down. Rhino's not content to sit at that.
He just went what, like 2? Okay, just a flash here, but I was still like nice engage, and Dasher comes in with the hijack. The moonwall picks everyone on the V3 to stay in place and just die, quite frankly, because Hawks are going into the base. They're going for Dresco. Dasher takes him down, and Washidai, he is the last one standing under the Nexus towers. They go, and this is cyberbullying from Hawks. They're going to get a clean ace.
And the Hawks, what did we say right from the draft? We said V3 had to be worried because the Hawks had a mid jungle that could go, that could link up, that could connect and break down what V3 wanted to do in these 5v5s. Dasher, blank, not for the first time this game, but for the last, crush through the engage, and this will be taking the game with it.
You have to imagine the first Nexus start falls. V3 will put up a bit of fight kick coming in from Unica, but it is a bit too little. It is a bit too late. The second Nexus start is gonna fall. Alright, the package from Yu-Gi-Oh means that we will get one more fight, Nightmare. Let's see if V3 can get anything turned up.
Okay, misjudged it slightly. A lot of shenanigans happened under that tower, and stopwatches were used to keep the Hawks deathless in that part of it, but again, Reiner on the Rel, talked about that mid-jungle, got to shout out Reiner again. Turns out actually a lot of the Hawks are playing well this game. Who would have thunk it? But Reiner on that Rel, meeting their targets and allowing the mid-jungle to play around a lot less defensive abilities from V3. All of their escapes were used, and then they pile on with that Wukong and the Silas, who once again stole that Amumu ult. And V3, they just cannot hold their battle lines at this point. It feels like that amount of gold, that Baron buff they've given over, that stops them. It robs them of the ability to stall out the game, which maybe they could have done if they hadn't made that big, huge mistake around that top lane outer turret.
You know the game's bad when Kanatsu's going Zhonya's on an R.
Oh my god. I mean, I actually hadn't noticed that. I had completely not noticed that. I mean, wants to go in stasis a little bit longer. I think your hyperproc scales off of AP. I mean, I'm not going to justify this. This is fun. You get to go golden, and the Hawks looking for the gold medal in this two-horse race between these teams. Nexus is open. Unica has a flash. What can you do with it?
He is getting stunned and dies. That is it. That's V3 with the last fight hit. Hell gonna drop down the Curse of the Sad Mummy, but it doesn't really do a whole lot. Marble free hitting in the backside, and it's a wash. It's a formality from the Hawks as they will take the win from the V3. 4-3 in the first round robin. Hawks off to a good start this split.
And, I think back to their last split, and coming out of that first round robin, they were 1-6 in their first round robin in spring. What a glow up it's been just between those two. Of course, they'll have to